You ever have one of those moments where you're standing in the middle of a crowd, drink in hand, laughter all around, but your stomach's twisting like you're the only one who knows a bomb's about to go off? That was me on New Year's Eve. The backyard was packed. String lights overhead, fire pit glowing, music loud enough to drown out any coherent thoughts. And right across from me, leaning against the deck railing with a solo cup and a lazy grin, was Luca, Tyler's cousin. Tyler, as in my ex. My messy, dramatic, absolutely the wrong person ex. We broke up 9 months ago, and I had been doing pretty well avoiding his whole family. That included the cousin I definitely shouldn't still be thinking about. But somehow, here we were, same party, same backyard, and Luca was wearing that same black denim jacket I'd always liked. Except this time, it wasn't just a memory. It was real, immediate, dangerous. Talia, my best friend, had dragged me to the party, promising it would be low-key and safe. No Tyler, she swore. I triple-checked. And she wasn't wrong. Tyler wasn't here. But she didn't say anything about Luca. I hadn't seen him since the breakup, though he'd liked one of my Instagram stories last month. That had sent me into a 3-hour spiral I didn't talk about to anyone. And now, seeing him in person again, I was instantly reminded of all the reasons he'd made things confusing back then. Tyler was intense, the type to love bomb and fight about everything. Luca? He was calm, grounded, the guy who always laughed at my bad jokes when Tyler didn't even hear them. He'd never crossed a line, not really. But there were moments, little moments. I remembered them too clearly. I tried to play it cool, sipping my drink and keeping my back half turned, but it was useless. I could feel his eyes on me before I even looked up. "Didn't expect to see you here," he said. His voice still had that husky warmth, like he was always on the verge of either a joke or a confession. I turned toward him, raising an eyebrow. "Yeah, well, the city's not that big. I guess we were bound to run into each other eventually," he smirked. "You think this counts as random?" "I think it counts as bad luck." He let out a low chuckle. "Still holding a grudge?" I looked at him, really looked. His hair was shorter, neater than I remembered, and there was a small scar on his jaw that definitely hadn't been there last year. But his eyes hadn't changed. Still, that same deep brown, soft around the edges like he could see through the noise. "Not holding a grudge," I said, just trying not to make another mistake. That made him pause. For a second, the flirtiness faded, and he tilted his head, like he was trying to figure out if I was serious. "Was I a mistake?" he asked, quieter now. I blinked. "You weren't anything." He nodded slowly, but I could tell that landed somewhere it wasn't supposed to. He looked down at his cup, swirling the drink. "Fair enough," he said. "Guess I just thought, I don't know, thought we had more to say. We don't. It should have ended there, but I didn't walk away. Neither did he. Around us, the countdown was starting. Talia called from across the yard, waving a bottle of cheap champagne. "Drew, come toast with us." I raised my cup in acknowledgement, but I didn't move. Neither did Luca. 10, 9, 8. The sky lit up with the first firework, red and gold. Then another one, green this time, cracking above the trees. 7, 6. You sure? Luca asked, his voice almost drowned out by the crowd. I didn't answer. My chest was tight, and my legs felt rooted in the cold, damp grass. 5, 4. He stepped closer, just a little. Close enough that I caught the faint scent of pine and cologne. 3. I should have stepped back. I should have left. 2. But I didn't. 1. And then it was midnight. Midnight hit like a sucker punch. Fireworks exploded overhead, cheers erupted, and all around us, couples kissed, friends screamed, "Happy New Year!" and strangers toasted plastic flutes of warm Prosecco. The backyard turned into chaos. Glitter and smoke and the bass of someone's speaker kicking up into overdrive. But all I could see was him. Luca hadn't moved. He was still standing there in front of me, eyes searching mine with that same calm intensity that made everything else feel too loud, too bright, too irrelevant. And then, God help me, I moved closer. It wasn't planned. I didn't think it through. I just let the tension pull me forward like gravity. And before either of us said a word, I kissed him. It was fast. One of those instinctual, heat-of-the-moment kisses that felt more like a question than a statement. My lips brushed his. Light, tentative. He didn't pull away. Instead, his hand came up, warm against the back of my neck, and he kissed me back. Slower this time. Deeper, like he'd been waiting for permission. Like he'd already memorized the shape of my mouth in some dream and was just checking to make sure it matched. The sound of fireworks cracked again, louder this time, but it felt far away, muffled, like we were underwater. By the time we pulled apart, the world had shifted under my feet. My skin felt hot. My stomach a mess of adrenaline and guilt and something I didn't have a name for. I stepped back first. Luca's expression was unreadable. Not shocked, not smug, not even regretful. Just still. I swallowed, hard. That didn't happen. He raised an eyebrow. I mean, it felt pretty real to me. Don't, I said, sharper than I meant to. Don't make a joke out of it. I wasn't joking. I ran a hand through my hair and turned away, heart pounding so loud it felt like it echoed in my throat. This was not how tonight was supposed to go. This was not what I needed. This wasn't what either of us needed. I could feel him behind me, but he didn't say anything right away. Finally, he asked, voice quiet again, "Do you regret it?" I hesitated. The honest answer was complicated. But the part of me still clinging to logic, still thinking about Tyler, about boundaries, about every version of this story that would blow up if it got out, took over. Yes, I lied. He didn't respond for a long time. I didn't look at him, but I could feel the weight of him shifting like he was about to say something, then changed his mind. I should go find Talia, I muttered. Right, he said, and just like that, I turned and walked back into the crowd, leaving him standing alone under a sky that was still lit up in fire and noise. The rest of the night passed in a blur. Talia was too drunk to notice anything off, and the rest of the party crowd was busy with champagne and countdown selfies. I managed to fake a few smiles, sip warm cider, and pretend like I hadn't just torched the last 9 months of self-control over one impulsive kiss. At some point, I found myself holed up in the kitchen, rinsing out a sticky cup just for something to do. My fingers shook under the faucet. I didn't even notice I was crying until someone handed me a paper towel. "You okay?" a girl I didn't recognize asked, concern wrinkling her forehead. "Yeah. Allergic to fireworks." I lied. She nodded and wandered off, thankfully not pushing. I didn't see Luca again for the rest of the party. He either left or was better at disappearing into the crowd than I was at pretending I hadn't just kissed the cousin of my ex. The one guy the first used to joke about being too perfect to be real. The same guy who used to sit across from me at family barbecues, giving me that quiet look that always said more than it should have. I remembered one night, months before Tyler and I broke up, when Luca and I ended up sitting on the back porch during some 4th of July thing. Tyler was off arguing with his uncle about politics, and Luca had passed me a beer without saying anything. We just sat there, listening to the fireworks, not talking. But when I looked over, he was already watching me. I should have known then. Or maybe I did. Maybe I just didn't want to admit it. The next morning, my phone buzzed before I even opened my eyes. "Luca, you meant it?" I stared at the screen for a while, blinking at the sunlight bleeding through the curtains. Meant what? The kiss? The regret? The mess I left in my wake? I didn't answer right away. I tossed the phone face down on my pillow and dragged myself to the shower, trying to wash the whole night out of my head. But it didn't work. His voice, his mouth, the look in his eyes, they stuck to me like smoke. After coffee, I picked up my phone again, still just his one message. No follow-up, no question mark. Just those 3 words, hanging there like a dare. Me. I don't know. It was the best I could do. His reply came within seconds. "Luca, then we should talk." I almost said no. Almost made up some excuse about needing space or time or clarity. But the truth was, I didn't have any of those things. So I typed, "When? Luca, come over tonight. After dinner." And somehow, I said yes. I spent the whole day second-guessing everything. Every word, every glance, every choice that led me to agreeing to go over to Luca's place. By mid-afternoon, I'd changed shirts 3 times. By 5, I was pacing my living room like I was about to walk into a job interview or a funeral, maybe both. My reflection in the mirror kept looking back at me like, "Really? You? The irony wasn't lost on me. After all, this wasn't some guy off a dating app. This was Luca, my ex's cousin. A person who knew parts of my past I didn't even like saying out loud. Someone who'd sat at the same holiday table as me while Tyler rubbed circles on my knee under the tablecloth. He knew the real me, the messy, insecure, guarded version of me. That was part of what made all of this feel so dangerous, and part of what made me go anyway. Around 7:30, I pulled up to his place, an older apartment complex tucked between a bakery and a tattoo parlor. I sat in my car for a full 2 minutes before texting him. Me. Here. The front door buzzed not even 10 seconds later. No response. Just the door unlocking like he'd been standing there, waiting. I stepped into the stairwell and climbed to the second floor, heart thudding like I'd just sprinted a mile. The hallway smelled like someone's burnt dinner and too much Febreze. Luca's door was slightly ajar when I reached it. He opened it wider the moment I raised my hand to knock. "Hey," he said simply. He looked tired. Hoodie and joggers. Hair slightly damp like he'd just showered. Eyes softer than I remembered. "Hey," I said back. He stepped aside to let me in, and I walked into a living room that was more lived in than I expected. Plants on the windowsill, a half-done puzzle on the coffee table, a beat-up guitar in the corner. The space felt calm, personal. Nothing like the chaos that had been circling my head all day. Luca closed the door and leaned back against it for a second, watching me. "So?" he said. "So?" I echoed, pulling my hands into the sleeves of my sweatshirt. "This is awkward." He didn't disagree, just nodded and motioned toward the couch. We sat. There was a beat of silence, then two. Finally, he said, "I wasn't going to kiss you." I turned to look at him, surprised. "Okay." "I need you to know that," he said. "Whatever happened last night, I didn't expect it. I didn't plan it." I swallowed. "I know. You kissed me." "Yeah," I muttered, voice a little raw. "I did. Why?" That stopped me. Not because I didn't have an answer, but because I had too many. I kissed him because it felt inevitable. Because it had been building between us for way too long. Because even when I was with Tyler, Luca made me feel seen in a way Tyler never had. Because I'd always wondered. Always wanted to know. And maybe because, for 1 second at midnight, I forgot about all the reasons I shouldn't. But instead of saying any of that, I looked at him and said the one thing I knew wouldn't make it worse. "I don't know." Luca let out a breath, nodding like he'd been expecting that answer. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. "Look," he said. "I've been trying to stay out of it. After you and Tyler split, I made a choice not to reach out. Even when I wanted to. I thought giving you space was the right thing." "Probably was," I said, my voice quieter. "But," he went on, "that doesn't mean I didn't think about it." "About you?" I blinked. "You mean after?" "I mean since the first time we met." That shut me up. Because, honestly, I'd always suspected it. Felt it in the way he used to look at me when Tyler wasn't paying attention. The way he laughed at my jokes like they actually landed. The way he seemed to know when something was wrong without me having to say it. But hearing him admit it? That was something else entirely. "You didn't do anything," I said after a long beat. "Even when we were—" "I know," he said quickly, "because I respected what you had, even if it wasn't what you deserved." That landed hard. He looked at me then, really looked, and I hated that I couldn't hold his gaze for more than a few seconds. "I don't want to be something that just happens when you're lonely," he added. "I'm not looking to sneak around, and I'm not trying to get in the middle of whatever you're still sorting through with Tyler." "I'm not," I said quickly. "There's nothing to sort through. That's over." "Good," he said, "because I don't want to be a rebound or some kind of revenge." That stung, but it was fair. We sat there for a while after that. The kind of silence that doesn't need filling. It wasn't cold. It wasn't tense. It just was. Eventually, I spoke. "So what now?" Luca shrugged, but his voice was firm when he answered. "We slow down. We be honest. And we figure it out. Together." I nodded slowly. "Okay. He smiled then. Small, careful. The kind that made me feel a little more solid. You hungry? He asked, standing. I could eat. He headed to the kitchen and started pulling things from the fridge. Leftover pasta, garlic bread, some weird soda I'd never seen before. As he moved around the small kitchen, I watched him. His back to me, sleeves pushed up, humming something under his breath. And it hit me, not like a firework this time, more like a quiet realization. I didn't know what this was yet, or how it would go. But for the first time in months, I wasn't looking behind me. I was looking right at him. We didn't talk much over dinner, not because there was nothing to say, but because there was something quietly comforting in the way it all unfolded. Luca handed me a mismatched plate, plopped the garlic bread on a napkin like it was fancy, and poured that weird orange soda into 2 glasses like we were at a real dinner party. I asked him what it was. He said it was some blood orange thing from the bodega downstairs. Tastes like Fanta's cooler cousin, he said. He wasn't wrong. We ate on the couch, the puzzle still sitting half-finished in front of us. At some point, I asked him what it was supposed to be. Some mountain in Norway, he said, but all the pieces look like snow and sadness, so it's basically impossible. I laughed, and it felt good. It felt easy in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. And not because we were pretending things weren't messy, because we weren't pretending at all. When the plates were empty and our fingers sticky from garlic butter, Luca stood up and cleared the dishes without a word. I watched him go, still trying to wrap my head around how familiar he felt in a space I'd never seen him in before. Like he belonged there, like maybe I did too. I didn't realize I was zoning out until he called from the kitchen. You want to help with this sad Norwegian mountain or just watch me suffer? I smiled and dropped down to the floor. Deal me in. We worked in silence at first, heads bent over cardboard chaos, passing each other corner pieces and muttering under our breath. Occasionally our hands would brush, and neither of us pulled away. Eventually Luca looked up and said, "So, about the kiss." I froze, puzzle piece halfway to the table. Yeah? I meant what I said, he continued. I wasn't planning on it, but I'm not sorry it happened. I didn't respond right away. I just looked at him, at the way his eyes had that steady warmth to them, like he wasn't afraid of silence, like he'd wait for me to speak when I was ready. I'm not sorry either, I said finally. It's complicated, he finished. Yeah, he nodded, like that was enough, like he wasn't here to pressure me into some big confession or immediate resolution. And then he said something I didn't expect. I liked you before, Tyler, I blinked. Wait, what? He leaned back against the couch, legs stretched out across the carpet. We matched on a dating app once, like 2 years ago, before you and Ty started hooking up. I stared at him. You're messing with me. I'm really not, he said. Your profile had this picture of you eating noodles with chopsticks in the most aggressively determined way possible. I thought it was hilarious. I covered my face. Oh my God, that picture? Yeah, he laughed. I remember swiping right and thinking, this guy's cute, doesn't take himself too seriously, and has zero hand-eye coordination. Seemed like my type, I groaned. That was literally the worst photo I had. My friend dared me to use it. Glad she did. I shook my head, still half horrified, half amused. So what happened? Why didn't we ever talk? You unmatched me, he said. What? No way. He shrugged. I assumed you found someone else or realized you were too good for me. No, I said, shaking my head. I think I just got overwhelmed and deleted the whole app. That was right before I met Tyler. Luca just nodded. Timing, huh? Yeah, timing. There was a long pause after that, not uncomfortable, just heavy. Like we were both taking inventory of the weird, winding road that had brought us to this night, this couch. This almost finished puzzle of Scandinavian snow. You know, I said slowly, it's kind of messed up. What is? That the one person I probably should have stayed away from turned out to be the one who actually made me feel like myself again. Luca didn't answer right away. He reached forward and nudged a puzzle piece into place. Then he looked at me and said, maybe that's not messed up. Maybe that's just real. My chest tightened. We didn't kiss again that night. Not because I didn't want to, but because something about the way he said that made me feel like I didn't need to. Not yet. Not tonight. When I finally stood to leave, Luca walked me to the door. No pressure. No expectations. Just as I was slipping on my coat, he said, "Hey." I turned. "Yeah?" "I don't know where this is going," he said, voice low, "but I'd like to find out, if you're up for it." I looked at him. Really looked. And for once, the chaos in my head didn't drown out the answer. "I'm up for it," he smiled. "Just a small, quiet thing." But it stayed with me the whole way home. The next few weeks unfolded like something between a slow burn and a balancing act. We didn't rush anything. There were no sleepovers, no dramatic declarations, no early morning texts that said "miss you" with a heart emoji. Luca wasn't like that. And truthfully, neither was I. I'd been burned enough times to know that I didn't want fireworks anymore. I wanted firewood. Something that kept burning long after the sparks faded. Still, it was impossible not to feel the weight of what we were doing. We met up twice a week, usually at his place or at a quiet coffee shop, where we sat across from each other and talked like people who weren't supposed to be doing this. But the thing was, it didn't feel wrong. It felt natural, comfortable, right. It was the outside world that made it complicated. Like Tyler. He hadn't been in touch in months, but mutual friends meant I still heard his name from time to time. A party he showed up to. A girl he was maybe seeing. His name would surface in conversation like a ripple, and every time it did, it knocked the air out of my lungs just a little. I hadn't told anyone about Luca, not even Talia, which was weird considering she was the one person I usually told everything to, but this felt too fresh, too easily misunderstood. I wanted it to be ours before it became anyone else's business. And honestly, I was scared. Scared of what people would say, of what Tyler might say, of how fragile this thing with Luca still felt, like a glass I was carrying through a crowded room. Then came the dinner. Luca texted me on a Wednesday. "Luca, my aunt's birthday is Sunday, family dinner. You'll probably hear about it. Just a heads up." I read it twice before responding. "Me? Tyler gonna be there?" Luca, "Yeah." I stared at the blinking cursor on my screen for a long time before replying. "Me, are you?" There was a pause. Then, "Luca, I have to be. Family thing." "Me, right." He called me a few minutes later. I didn't answer at first, but then I changed my mind and picked up. "Hey," he said. "You okay?" "I don't know," I admitted. I wasn't ready to think about all that yet." "I know," he said quietly. "I wouldn't have brought it up if I didn't think it might come up another way. I didn't want you caught off guard." I sat down on the edge of my bed, fingers knotted in the hem of my sweatshirt. "Do you think he knows?" "I doubt it," he said. "I've kept things low-key. I haven't said a word to anyone. But it's going to happen eventually." "Yeah." There was a pause, and then he added, "But we'll deal with it, together." It was the together that got me. That small, steady reminder that even though this was messy and weird and uncharted, we weren't navigating it alone. That Sunday night, I stayed off my phone. I didn't want updates. I didn't want texts or photos or stories about what Tyler said or who he brought. I didn't want to picture Luca sitting at the same table I used to sit at, pretending everything was fine. But around 10, my phone buzzed. Luca survived. Barely. I stared at it, unsure if I wanted to ask more. Then another text came in. "Luca, he asked about you." My stomach twisted. "Me? What did you say?" This time, the reply came after a few minutes. "Luca, just that I hadn't talked to you in a while." I sat with that for a while. I knew it was the right answer. The safe one. But it still made something ache in my chest. "Me? Thanks." "Luca, you okay?" "Me? I don't know." He didn't press me. He just sent one more text. "Luca, want to come over tomorrow?" I hesitated. Then, yeah. The next night, I knocked on his door without really knowing what I was walking into. He opened it in sweatpants and a hoodie again, barefoot this time, hair damp. He looked tired, not in a dramatic way, just real, like being around his family all day had drained something from him. You didn't have to come, he said, stepping aside. I wanted to, I said, stepping in. He closed the door behind me, and for a moment we just stood there. Not touching, not talking, just looking at each other like we were both trying to figure out if this still felt like it had before. It did. Luca stepped closer and pressed his forehead gently against mine. It was the kind of gesture that said more than a kiss could. Quiet, grounding, steady. Do you ever think about what would have happened if we met differently? I asked softly. All the time, he murmured. But we didn't. No, he said. We didn't. And I'm okay with that. Because we still found our way here. I closed my eyes. It didn't erase the weirdness. Or the guilt. Or the lingering tension that was always going to exist, like static in the air. But it made me feel like, maybe, just maybe, it didn't have to define us. Not if we didn't let it. For a few weeks, we lived in that in-between space. Not official, not secret, just ours. We didn't talk about Tyler again. We didn't need to. It was a silent agreement. We'd crossed a line, and now we were walking that line as carefully as we could. I still hadn't told anyone, and neither had Luca, which worked until one Thursday evening when everything blew up in the most cliché way possible. It was my own fault, really. I got careless. Talia and I were sitting on my couch, watching some trashy dating show and drinking wine. I was scrolling through my phone, not even thinking, when I opened a photo Luca had sent me the night before. It wasn't anything scandalous. Just a picture of him holding up a takeout container with a pouty face. Because the restaurant forgot his dumplings, but I smiled when I saw it. Like really smiled. That half-embarrassed, involuntary smile that only ever shows up when someone gets under your skin in the best possible way. Unfortunately, Talia saw it. And she knew that smile. She paused the show. What was that? She asked, suspicious. What? You just made a face. No, I didn't. You did. A full-on hard eyes emoji face. I locked my phone and shoved it under a pillow. It's nothing. She stared at me. It's not nothing. I sighed, bracing myself. It's Luca. She blinked. Luca, Tyler's cousin. I nodded, barely meeting her eyes. Talia didn't say anything for a second. Just sat there, wine glass halfway to her mouth, brow furrowed in disbelief. Are you serious? Yes. Luca? Yes. How long? Since New Year's. That stopped her cold. Wait, you kissed him at midnight? I rubbed my forehead. Yeah. There was a beat of stunned silence. Then she said, wow. Yeah. Another pause. She sipped her wine and set the glass down with more force than necessary. Okay, look, I'm not going to freak out. But are you sure about this? About him? I didn't answer right away. Because I wasn't sure in the way people are supposed to be sure. It wasn't neat. It wasn't logical. But every time I thought about him, every time I saw his name light up my phone or heard his voice through the door, I felt calm, like I could actually breathe around him. I don't know what it is yet, I said, but I know I feel better when I'm with him than I ever did with Tyler. That has to mean something. Talia looked at me for a long moment. Then she sighed and nodded. Okay, she said, then I'm on your side. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Thank you. But, she added, you need to be prepared. Because it's going to get messy. I know. And Tyler, when he finds out, it's not going to be pretty. I know. And like clockwork, it happened that weekend. Luca texted me around noon on Saturday. Luca, Tyler knows. I stared at my screen, heart immediately picking up speed. Me. How? Luca, my mom. She asked if I was seeing anyone. I didn't say much, but she figured it out. She told her sister. Her sister told him. I didn't reply right away. I just sat there, staring at those words, stomach twisting. Then, what did he say? Luca sent back just one word. Luca called, and then, Luca, he's pissed. The fallout came faster than I expected. I didn't hear from Tyler directly, but that night, I got a DM. Tyler, didn't take you long, huh? I stared at it for a long time before replying. Me, it wasn't like that. Tyler, sure. Me, you and I were done, Ty. Tyler, that doesn't make it less F times CKED up. Me, I'm not going to defend myself to you. We both know how things ended. He didn't respond to that. But the next day, Talia texted me a screenshot from someone's story. It was Tyler, sitting at a bar with a caption that said, "Mood, betrayed," and some dramatic acoustic song playing in the background. It was stupid. It was petty. But it still got to me. Not because I felt guilty. Tyler and I had been done for almost a year. But because suddenly, this thing with Luca wasn't just between us anymore. It was visible. It was narrated. And people had opinions. Mutual friends started acting weird. I noticed the passive-aggressive likes and the sudden silence from certain circles. One friend even texted me, "Bro, Luca? Really?" That's when I knew I had to say something. To someone other than Talia. To Luca. So I went to his apartment. He opened the door, and I could tell right away. He'd had a rough day. He stepped aside, and I walked in, not saying anything for a few seconds. Then I turned to him and said, "We can't hide anymore." He looked up at me, surprised. "Are you sure?" "No," I admitted. "But I don't want to pretend this is something I'm ashamed of." His shoulders relaxed a little. "Same. So what do we do?" Lucas stepped closer, gently cupped the back of my neck, and said, "We stop worrying about everyone else and figure out what this is for us." I nodded. Okay. And just like that, I kissed him again. Not in secret, not in shadows, but in the full light of everything we'd stepped into. Messy, complicated, and real. Something shifted after that kiss. Not just between us, but around us. Like we'd passed a point we couldn't come back from, and for once, that wasn't terrifying. It was clarifying. We weren't hiding anymore. And though that didn't mean we started holding hands in public or posting a couple pics online, it meant we stopped pretending it didn't matter. It did. Lucas started showing up at my place more. We'd order takeout and fall asleep with the TV still on. He left his hoodie on the back of my kitchen chair like it was his spot now. And I started keeping his favorite oat milk in the fridge without thinking about it. It wasn't dramatic. It was subtle. Real. But the fallout from Tyler was still hanging over everything. I knew it wasn't just about jealousy. It was about pride. About control. About the fact that, in his mind, I was his story to tell, even long after we were done. And now that someone from his family was involved, it felt like betrayal, stacked on betrayal. I'd gone nearly a month without hearing from him directly. Then one night, just as Luca and I were getting back from a grocery run, I saw the message. "Tyler, need to talk, in person." I stared at it. My phone suddenly felt heavier in my hand. Luca noticed. "Is it him?" "Yeah." "You gonna meet him?" I hesitated. "I think I should." He nodded, slowly. "You don't owe him anything." "I know," I said. "But I don't want this to turn into something worse than it already is." Luca didn't argue. He just said, "You want me to come with?" "No," I said. "I need to do this on my own." We met the next evening at a coffee shop near his place. Neutral territory. Tyler was already sitting when I arrived, wearing that same stiff denim jacket he always wore when he was trying to seem unbothered. But he didn't look unbothered. He looked pissed. Tired. And slightly hungover, if I was guessing. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Hey." I sat across from him, folding my hands on the table. "Thanks for agreeing to talk." Tyler didn't respond right away, just stared at his coffee like it had betrayed him too. Finally, he said, "Why him?" There it was, no buildup, just straight to the wound. I took a breath. Because it wasn't about him. Not at first. It was about how I felt when I was with him. How I still do. Do you have any idea how that looks? I do, and I'm sorry, I really am. But you and I were done, Tyler. We'd been done for a while, even before we said the words. He scoffed, but he didn't argue. "Did you ever think about what it would do to me?" he asked. I didn't answer right away, because the honest answer was yes, I had. Every step of the way. "I did," I said. But I couldn't live my life trying not to upset you anymore. I did that for too long. That landed hard. His jaw clenched. He looked away. You could have picked anyone, he muttered. But you picked someone from my family. I didn't pick him, I said. It wasn't a plan. It just happened. And I don't expect you to be okay with it. But I'm not going to apologize for how I feel. Tyler was quiet for a long time after that, just sat there, jaw tight, breathing slow. Then he looked at me and said, "You're serious about him?" I nodded. "Yeah, I am." He nodded once. No sarcasm, no eye roll. Just a slight movement, like he was acknowledging a weight he couldn't carry anymore. Then, quietly, he said, "Don't let him make you feel invisible." The words hit harder than I expected, not because I feared it, but because I knew exactly what he meant, what it felt like. "I won't," I said. "I promise." We sat there in silence for another minute. And then, just like that, Tyler stood up and walked out, leaving his coffee untouched. When I got back to my apartment, Luca was sitting on the couch, flipping through some documentary but not really watching it. I dropped my keys and said, "It's done." He muted the TV. "How'd it go?" "Better than I thought." Luca nodded. "You okay?" I walked over and sank beside him. "I think so." He pulled me in without hesitation, arm wrapping around my shoulder, grounding me. I leaned against him, feeling the steady rise and fall of his chest. We sat there for a while. No words, no noise, just the comfort of being next to someone who wasn't afraid to be all in. Eventually, I looked up at him. "I want this," I said. "Not just the sneaking around, not just the stolen time. I want something real." "With you?" Luca smiled. "You've had it this whole time." Things didn't magically get easier after that night. Tyler didn't start sending us holiday cards. Some of our mutual friends kept their distance. And there were definitely people who made assumptions about what had really happened between me and Luca, but we didn't owe them an explanation. And after a while, I stopped needing to offer one. Because this wasn't about them. It was about us. We started showing up together. Nothing flashy. Just present. I brought him to Talia's birthday party, where she promptly grilled him for 10 minutes and then declared, "Okay, fine, I like him." We ran errands together like we'd always been doing it. Trader Joe's, the post office. Grabbing smoothies on the way home. He introduced me to his friends as his boyfriend. I didn't correct him. And one night, sitting on my couch while he tried, and failed, to explain why he liked crossword puzzles, I realized I wasn't holding my breath anymore. I wasn't waiting for something to go wrong. I wasn't comparing him to someone else. I wasn't second-guessing everything that came out of my mouth. I was just with him, fully, finally, honestly. The next morning, I caught him standing at the stove, hair messy, wearing nothing but boxers and a hoodie, trying to flip pancakes with one hand and check a work email on his phone with the other. He looked over at me and grinned like it was the most normal thing in the world. Like this us wasn't built on something complicated, like it was just right. And it was. I walked over, wrapped my arms around him from behind, and said, "Do you know I used to think about this?" He glanced back. "Me flipping pancakes in my underwear?" "No, this, being with you. I just never thought I'd actually let myself have it." He set the spatula down and turned to face me, serious now. "You didn't let yourself have it," he said. "You chose it." I nodded. "Yeah, I did." He leaned in, kissed me softly, and whispered, "I'm glad you did." Later that night, we sat on the couch. The sad Norwegian puzzle finally finished after 2 months of slow, careful effort. I stared at the snow-covered mountain and thought about how fitting it was. Messy, hard, worth it. Luca nudged my leg with his. "You thinking about him?" "No," I said honestly. "I'm thinking about you." And I meant it. Because in the end, it didn't matter that he was my ex's cousin. It didn't matter how we started, or how many awkward conversations we had to survive. What mattered was that under the noise, under the expectations, under the weight of what-ifs, we'd found each other. And at midnight, under the fireworks, we didn't just kiss. We began.